Shadows of desire. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the sprawling estate. The house was a grand one, with white columns and manicured lawns that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. It belonged to Mr. Harold Anderson, or HOA, as he preferred to be called, a wealthy businessman who had made his fortune through real estate investments. He lived alone, save for a small staff of servants who kept the mansion running smoothly. Among them was Maria, a young woman from a nearby village who worked as the house girl. Maria was only 22 but carried herself with an air of quiet dignity. She had been hired 6 months ago after her family fell on hard times. Her parents needed money for medical bills, and Maria had taken it upon herself to find work far away from home. Though she missed her siblings dearly, she found solace in the routine of her duties at the estate. Cleaning rooms, cooking meals, tending to laundry, these tasks gave her days structure, even if they were physically demanding. But there was something unsettling about working under HOA's roof. From the moment she arrived, Maria sensed a strange tension whenever he looked at her. His gaze lingered longer than necessary, his compliments felt loaded with hidden meaning, and his casual brushes against her arm left her feeling uneasy. At first, she dismissed these interactions as mere quirks of a lonely man living in such a vast, empty house. But over time, those quirks began to take on darker undertones. It all came to a head one evening when HOA approached Maria while she was tidying up the library. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, its golden glow dancing across shelves filled with leather-bound books. Maria knelt on the floor, dusting beneath a heavy oak desk. She didn't hear him enter until his polished shoes appeared just inches from her face. "Maria," he said, his voice smooth yet commanding. "You've done excellent work today." Startled, Maria scrambled to her feet, clutching the duster tightly in her hands. "Thank you, sir," she replied, keeping her eyes lowered respectfully. HOA stepped closer, closing the gap between them. "You're always so diligent, so careful with everything you do. I appreciate that." His proximity made Maria uncomfortable. She took a step back, bumping into the edge of the desk. "It's my job, sir. I'm just doing what I'm paid to do." He chuckled softly, leaning against the desk beside her. "Ah, but you're more than just an employee to me, Maria. You're special." Her heart skipped a beat. Special? What did he mean by that? She forced a polite smile, though her palms were beginning to sweat. I don't understand, sir." HOA reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch sent a jolt of alarm coursing through her body. "Don't be modest," he said, his tone dropping to a whisper. "You know how much I admire you. How much I want you." Maria froze, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not now. "Sir, please," she stammered, trying to pull away. "I think you're mistaken." "No mistake," he insisted, tightening his grip on her shoulder. "I see the way you look at me sometimes. You feel it too, don't you?" "I don't," she exclaimed, finally finding her voice. "Please let go of me." For a moment, HOA stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he released her. But instead of stepping back, he moved even closer, trapping her between himself and the desk. "You can't deny this forever, Maria," he murmured, his breath hot against her ear. "Sooner or later, you'll realize we're meant to be together." She shoved him away with surprising strength, her fear giving way to anger. "I would never agree to anything like that," she snapped, her voice trembling. "I came here to work, not to be harassed." HOA's face darkened, and for the first time, Maria saw a flicker of rage in his eyes. "Careful, girl," he warned, his voice cold. "You should consider your position before speaking to me like that." "My position?" she shot back, tears welling up in her eyes. My position is clear, I am your employee, nothing more. And if you try anything again, I will leave this house immediately. With that, she pushed past him and fled the library, leaving behind the oppressive silence and the weight of his unspoken threats. Her heart pounded wildly as she ran down the hallway, desperate to put as much distance between herself and HOA as possible. When she reached her tiny bedroom above the kitchen, she locked the door behind her and collapsed onto her bed, sobbing uncontrollably. The next morning, Maria woke with a sense of dread weighing heavily on her chest. She knew she couldn't avoid HOA forever, he was her employer, after all, but the thought of facing him filled her with anxiety. Still, she resolved to act as though nothing had happened. If she showed any sign of weakness, he might interpret it as encouragement. As she descended the stairs to begin her chores, she heard HOA's voice echoing from the dining room. He was speaking with Mrs. Caldwell, the elderly cook who had worked at the estate for decades. Maria hesitated outside the doorway, listening intently. She's becoming a problem, HOA was saying, his tone clipped. I may have to reconsider keeping her on. Mrs. Caldwell sighed audibly. Oh, Harold, don't be ridiculous. That poor girl has done nothing wrong. She works harder than anyone else in this house. That's not the point, HOA snapped. She disrespects me, undermines my authority. I won't tolerate it. Maria clenched her fists, biting back tears. So this was how it would be. He would twist the truth, make her out to be the villain, and use his power to punish her for standing up to him. For a fleeting moment, she considered quitting right then and there. But where would she go? Without references or savings, finding another job would be nearly impossible. And what about her family? They were counting on her. Determined not to give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry, Maria plastered a neutral expression on her face and entered the dining room. Good morning, sir, she said stiffly, avoiding eye contact. Is there anything you need help with? HOA glanced up from his breakfast, his lips curling into a smug smile. Actually, yes. Clean the windows in the east wing. They're filthy. Of course, sir, she replied, turning on her heel before he could say anything else. Throughout the day, Maria threw herself into her work, scrubbing every surface with meticulous care. Each stroke of the cloth became a silent act of defiance, a reminder that she wouldn't let him break her spirit. Yet no matter how busy she kept herself, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow moving across the walls, made her glance nervously over her shoulder. By evening, exhaustion had set in, both physical and emotional. As she prepared dinner in the kitchen, Mrs. Caldwell joined her, concern etched on her wrinkled face. Are you all right, dear? The older woman asked gently. You seem troubled. Maria hesitated, unsure whether to confide in her. But the kindness in Mrs. Caldwell's eyes gave her courage. It's Mr. Anderson, she admitted quietly. He's been inappropriate with me. Last night, he tried to force himself on me. Mrs. Caldwell gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Oh, my dear child. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't know what to do, Maria confessed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm scared. If I report him, he'll ruin me. No one will believe me. The cook placed a comforting hand on Maria's shoulder. Listen to me. You are not alone in this. There are others who have seen how he behaves. We can stand together, protect each other. For the first time in days, Maria felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps she didn't have to face this battle alone. With Mrs. Caldwell's support, and maybe that of the other staff members, she could find a way to hold HOA accountable without sacrificing her livelihood. Over the following weeks, tensions within the household grew palpable. HOA continued to make advances toward Maria, each attempt met with firm rejection. Meanwhile, whispers spread among the staff, fueled by Mrs. Caldwell's discreet efforts to rally their collective strength. Slowly but surely, alliances formed, creating a united front against their predatory employer. One fateful afternoon, HOA summoned Maria to his study. The room was dark, the curtains drawn tight against the midday sun. He sat behind his massive mahogany desk, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. "Sit down," he ordered, gesturing to the chair opposite him. Maria obeyed hesitantly, her stomach churning with apprehension. "Yes, sir. I've decided to let you go," he announced bluntly. Effective immediately. Shock coursed through her veins. "What? Why?" "You know why," he growled, slamming his fist on the desk. "Your insolence, your refusal to comply, it ends now." Before Maria could respond, Mrs. Caldwell burst into the room, flanked by two other servants. "That's enough, Harold," the cook declared, her voice ringing with authority. "We know what you've been doing. All of us. And we won't stay silent anymore." HOA's face turned crimson with fury. "How dare you interfere? This is none of your business." "It is our business," Mrs. Caldwell retorted. "We won't allow you to prey on innocent women. Either you treat Maria with respect, or we walk out together. Choose wisely." For once, HOA was speechless. Defeated, he slumped back in his chair, glaring at the group assembled before him. "Fine," he muttered bitterly. "She stays. But mark my words, this isn't over." As they left the study, Maria felt a surge of triumph mixed with relief. Together, they had stood their ground, refusing to let fear dictate their lives. Though the road ahead might still be fraught with challenges, she knew she wasn't alone. In unity, they had found their power, and their freedom. And so, amidst the shadows of desire and despair, a beacon of hope emerged, illuminating the path forward for Maria and those who stood beside her.